You've probably heard of Smeeta Kavat. These wonderful and beautiful companions have a unique mod called Charm, capable of giving you random buffs periodically. One of those buffs doubles your affinity and resource gains for 2 minutes. But given both the chance to get any buff, and then the chance to get that particular buff, how powerful overall is Charm? I'm the Engineer, let's solve a practical problem. If you enjoy these videos and want to see live content from me too, head on over to twitch.tv/thekengineer. Or if you want to catch the math behind these analytical videos, whether to analyse the details yourself, or simply to see how it's all calculated, you can get access to it by supporting me through Patreon as well. Now let's look at what Charm actually does. Every 27 seconds, it has a 28% chance of giving you one of the Charm buffs. They may seem like arbitrary numbers, but that's just what's on the mod. There are 6 Charm buffs in total. So with a 28% chance of a buff, and 6 different buffs, the chance you get the double resource and affinity buff on a given interval is about 4.67%. This doubling effect can stack with itself with separate timers, meaning you can get double for 4 times, or double for 8 times, all the way up to 5 lots of doubling for 32 times the usual affinity and resources. All of these buffs multiply with resource or affinity boosters as well, for yet another doubling. However, such high scaling requires basically unattainable luck. The chance to proc the buff 5 times in a row for maximum benefit before it expires is 1 in 4,518,207. That's just slightly more often than once in every 4 years of mission time. Instead, during an infinitely long mission, the average boost you'll get is 22.5%, taking into account the chance of stacked buffs. There are ways to improve on this. The Kavat mod Tech Enhance increases the Kavat buff duration by 30%, making the doubling buff last 156 seconds instead of 120. This not only increases the amount of time you're buffed for, but also increases the chance of a stacked buff. Because Charm may proc every 27 seconds, the extra time allows for 6 chances rather than 5 at stacking. This makes the typical frequency of 5 stacked buffs come down from once every nearly 4 years to once every 100 days of mission time. Still not really happening to you, probably. But in an infinitely long mission, you'll be buffed by an average of 31.5%, up from 22% without Tech Enhance. Another way to buff Charm is to unequip your guns, bringing only melee weapons or bows. This prevents the instant reload buff from happening at all. I can't say for certain if this actually removes the buff from the pool, or simply fails to trigger any buff if this is the one that's chosen. That said, other sources seem to believe it does actually remove the buff from the pool, therefore increasing the chance you get one of the other buffs. So let's take that as true and see what effect that actually has. Running without guns, but also without Tech Enhance, the average buff to drops and affinity you'll get in an infinitely long mission is 27.4%. And that rises to 37% if you use Tech Enhance as well. Given how powerful melee is overall in the current meta, as well as the Kuva Brahma, limiting yourself to bows and melee only is far from the end of the world. Now, so far I've talked about the average buff in an infinitely long mission. Funnily enough, no one's running an infinitely long mission. When you start a mission, Charm may or may not proc straight away, but even if it does proc, it has nothing to stack with. Indeed, the first 4 proc attempts, or 5 if you're using Tech Enhance, will not have enough previous procs in the mission to stack with for full efficiency. What this means is that the start of a mission will have a lower average buff compared to anything after 3 minutes. Taking this into account, the shorter the mission is, the lower the average buff will be throughout the mission. Missions under 1 minute long will have an average buff of 9.6% to 11.5%, depending on your setup. Missions up to 108 seconds, so that's 1 minute 48 seconds, average between 12.2% and 14.8%. At a hair over 3 minutes, that's 189 seconds, any buffs procced at this point will have full opportunity for stacking, and the average has risen to between 16.6 and 23.5%. Even after that point, the actual average will still remain below the maximum though. Those first couple minutes with reduced potential will always bring the average down. With a mission time of 5 minutes, the average boost is between 18.8 and 28.4%, depending on the setup. Mission length to 10 minutes averages now around 20.6 to 32.7%, and mission length to 30 minutes average rises to between 21.9% and 35.6%. This means for longer endurance runs, Charm becomes more and more effective, tapering off towards that maximum value. Missions below 5 minutes will average a much lower overall buff, although the actual difference is, in truth, on the order of a few percent. Far more efficiency is going to be lost to loading screens than to non-stacked Kavat buffs. In the main, bringing a Kavat with Charm without optimizing your loadout with Tech Enhance or melee only has lower overall benefit than an MR30 relay blessing. A fully optimized Charm setup is about 1/3 as powerful as a booster from the market. Remember though, average isn't everything. While for affinity and most resources, you're stuck with the average, resources that drop infrequently like Steel Essence can be strategically picked up. Waiting for the buff to happen before picking up those resources can see you get a much larger real boost. The double resource buff from Charm procs roughly every 9.5 minutes when you have guns equipped, or roughly every 8 minutes when you have only melee and bows equipped. This means you can be waiting quite some time before being able to grab those drops with the boost, so only try to do this if you're running a mission that's at least 30 minutes long. So there you have it. Smeeta Charm can give you a variety of buffs, with the doubling resource and affinity buff increasing your typical rewards between 16 and 24% in fast missions, or up to around 22 to 36% in long missions. If you can get the right setup, you can exploit the buff to heavily stack certain rewards like Steel Essence. But overall, the increase is about comparable to that of an MR30 relay blessing. Along the way, you'll get temporary fixed orange crits, occasional rare resources, and some mostly forgettable boosts to energy, shields and reloading. If you have found this video helpful, make sure to give it a like, and subscribe as well to catch more videos as they go live. You can also support this and future content over at Patreon to help me bring more to you. That's all for now, so as always, get charmed, gain buffs, and fight well, Tenno.